Now we're going to take a look at some other options for extrusions, and we're also going to take a look at rendering. We haven't looked at rendering yet. Right now, as we've been working on these 3D models in Photoshop, they've only been basically previews. They haven't been the fully rendered files. The fully rendered files have the full quality in them. So I have this file that we worked on before, and there's a text layer up at the top here. And what I want to do is I want to extrude that, and then I'm going to show you some of the options that you can play around with the extrusion. So we're going to go to 3D, to New 3D Extrusion from Selected Layer. And up here on the top in the Properties panel, I have the 3D object selected in the 3D panel. And up here on the top, we have some options for different shapes and deformations. And if I click this drop down, you can see some of the default bevels that can be applied here. And some of them change the distance of the object. Notice that some of these have been deformed a bit. And all of this stuff can be played around with and messed around with in these options up here. The first one is deform, and the second one is the cap option. Now these interactive controls will come into play, and it gives you some kind of a preview to show you what you need to do in order to mess around with the cap interactively. So if I click and drag up and down, I can increase or decrease the cap value. If I pull it all the way down, I can get rid of it altogether. If I pull it all the way up, I can really increase that cap value. Then we have these range dials for the front bevel, how much of the distance of the bevel there is. And we also have a dial here for the inflation angle. So I'm pulling it back and forth. So there's some interactive controls for that. The deform options allows you, and again, this is an interactive box. You'll see that there's different options for bending X and Y, and this will taper. So if I choose bending, notice that what happens to the model. You can see that it's deforming, it's altering the shape of the 3D model in the background. And then if I mess around with the taper, you can see that I can pull it back and forth. I can make it taper in or out, pull it in or pull it back. So that's some of the options that are here. If I click on this, this just goes back to the coordinates, and that allows you to align things. Now I'm going to move around the scene to change the options just to show you. If I go into the scene options and I start moving this model around, you notice that some of these edges are really jagged. Look at these edges here, and look at how they're not clean. They're really not the way that they should be. They're not full quality. So when we actually finished with your 3D model, the next step would be to render the model. So if I go to the 3D menu, down here there's an option here to render the 3D layer. So if I go ahead and click on that, it's going to start rendering the file. You notice that it does this in multiple passes, and the progress will be reported to you in the lower left-hand corner. You can see already, though, that the quality is much better than what we saw before. Notice that the shadow in the background in particular, if you didn't render the file, the shadow would look awful. But now the shadow looks a lot more crisp. It looks clean, and it looks a lot better. And as it's going through these passes, it's going to go through and it's just going to make this look a lot better than what it did before. It's going to incorporate the lighting. It's going to incorporate all the shading. It's going to soften up all the edges. And you can see already that we have a pretty clean model.